A pregnant worker clutched her stomach, struggling to stay on her feet. Her manager just laughed and said, "Find another job." But what he didn't know, one of his employees was an undercover CEO, and she was about to change everything. Here's what happened. But before we continue, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Subscribe to the channel because tomorrow at the same time we'll bring you another powerful undercover story that reveals the hidden realities behind the institutions we trust. You won't want to miss it. Alexandra Winters stared at the quarterly report spread across her desk, her forehead creased with concern. Something was wrong with the numbers from her flagship Daylight store, and she couldn't quite put her finger on it. What had once been the crown jewel of her retail empire was now showing troubling signs of decline. 15 years ago, Alexandra had opened that first Daylight location with nothing but a small loan and an unwavering vision: create a retail workplace where employees thrived alongside the business. That original store had pulled her out of poverty, had been the foundation for everything that followed. Now, with 76 locations nationwide, Daylight was known for its employee-first culture and work-life balance policies. "This doesn't make sense," she murmured, comparing the flagship's declining customer satisfaction scores with their previously stellar ratings. The drop had been gradual at first, but the past 3 months showed a precipitous fall. Her operations director, Marcus, stepped in. "You wanted to see me about the quarterly numbers?" "The flagship store is underperforming, Marcus. What's going on there?" Marcus's expression remained calm, practiced. "It's just market conditions, Alexandra. Retail is struggling everywhere." "Market conditions don't explain specific complaints about staff morale," she countered, sliding several printed customer reviews across the desk. "Read these. Staff seemed unhappy and stressed. The cheerful atmosphere I loved is gone. Employees looked afraid to help me. Isolated incidents, the regional director assures me everything is running smoothly." "Then explain this." Alexandra pulled up the employee turnover report on her tablet. "Our flagship location has lost 17 employees in the past 6 months. That's double the turnover of any other store." After Marcus left, Alexandra stood at her office window. This wasn't just about numbers. That first store had saved her life, given her purpose after years of struggling in poverty. Its decline felt personal, as if the very foundation of everything she'd built was cracking. Alexandra considered the traditional solutions first. She could send in a corporate evaluation team, but employees always behaved differently when they knew headquarters was watching. Mystery shoppers might catch customer service issues, but wouldn't reveal the internal problems causing the decline. "There's only one way to see the unfiltered truth," Alexandra told her reflection. Today would be her last day as Alexandra Winters, CEO, before temporarily becoming someone else entirely. 3 hours later, she barely recognized herself. A hairstylist had applied a temporary dark brown dye to her blonde hair and cut it into an unremarkable shoulder-length style. Color contacts transformed her distinctive green eyes to a common brown. Gone were the designer labels, replaced by mass market basics, slightly worn at the edges. "Alex Walker," she practiced introducing herself in the mirror, adopting a slight vocal fry that hid her confident tone. "Just looking for seasonal work to make ends meet." The application process itself raised immediate red flags. When Alexandra submitted her resume, using her fake identity, she deliberately included gaps in employment. Despite these obvious warning signs, she received a call within hours. "Don't you want to know more about my experience?" Alexandra asked, surprised. "We need bodies on the floor for holiday rush," the voice replied dismissively. "Orientations at 8 a.m. Don't be late." The Daylight flagship store stood exactly as Alexandra remembered it, a gleaming testament to modern retail design with its signature sunshine yellow accents. But walking through the employee entrance felt like entering unfamiliar territory. "You're Alex, right?" A harried young woman thrust a folder into her hands. "I'm Nina from HR. Well, not actual HR. That's all at corporate now. I just handle the paperwork." The orientation materials inside were outdated, employee handbooks from 2 years ago with the wrong benefits information. Several pages about Daylight's commitment to work-life balance had been removed entirely. A tall man, around 30, strode into the room, clicking off the welcome video mid-sentence. "I'm Brandon Mercer, floor manager. That corporate welcome stuff takes forever, and we need you on the floor today. Here's what matters: sales targets, loss prevention, and productivity metrics. Meet your quotas, don't let people steal, and work efficiently. Do that, and we'll get along fine." "But what about customer service training?" one new hire asked. "Famous for giving customers a great experience, sure," Brandon cut in. "But that comes after you learn the basics. Let's focus on not screwing up first, then worry about making people feel special." Throughout the day, Alexandra noticed things that made her stomach tighten. The once vibrant employee break room was now sterile and institutional. The motivational quotes she'd personally selected had been replaced with sales target charts and stern policy reminders. Staff moved with nervous efficiency, jumping whenever Brandon appeared. They avoided his gaze, ducking into aisles or suddenly finding busy work. Nobody laughed, nobody chatted. The warmth and community Alexandra had built her company on had vanished. Alexandra was arranging throw pillows on a display when she first noticed Sarah. Despite being visibly pregnant, at least 7 months along by Alexandra's estimate, Sarah moved efficiently through the kitchenware section, helping an elderly customer select a coffee maker. "Thank you so much, dear," the elderly woman said, as Sarah carefully wrote down brewing instructions. "My grandson bought me one of these last year, but I could never figure it out." "No problem at all, Mrs. Geller. Call the store if you have any questions after you get it home. Ask for Sarah." Her smile was genuine, not the forced retail version Alexandra had been seeing all day. During her shortened lunch break, Alexandra found herself sitting across from Sarah in the break room. "First day?" Sarah asked kindly, noticing Alexandra's overwhelmed expression. "That obvious, huh?" Alexandra smiled, slipping into her Alex persona. "We all had that look once." Sarah laughed, then winced slightly, placing a hand on her stomach. "Are you okay?" Alexandra asked with genuine concern. "Just Braxton Hicks contractions. False labor. Nothing to worry about at 7 months." Alexandra leaned forward. "What's Brandon's deal? He seems..." "Intense, terrifying, a complete nightmare," Sarah supplied with a wry smile. "All of the above. He was transferred here about 8 months ago, and everything changed. This used to be such a great place to work." James, a supervisor, appeared in the doorway. "Sarah, I hate to ask, but can you cut your lunch short? The Anderson order is here for pickup, and nobody else knows where it is." After Sarah left, Alexandra turned to James. "She seems like she really knows her stuff." James nodded. "Sarah's been here 3 years, knows everything about every department. Customers love her." He hesitated. "Her husband was military, died in an accident 6 months ago. She found out she was pregnant a week after the funeral." "That's awful." "Yeah, she's the strongest person I know, never complains, even though Brandon's been making her life hell since she announced her pregnancy." Throughout the afternoon, Alexandra watched Sarah handle the heaviest customer service load, being assigned to restock the highest and lowest shelves, and receiving the most difficult customers. By day's end, Alexandra noticed how Sarah discreetly massaged her lower back when no one was watching, how she would lean against counters for brief moments of relief. Over the next week, Alexandra methodically documented everything she observed. Brandon Mercer's management style went beyond mere strictness into something far more insidious. He operated on fear, cultivating an atmosphere where employees were too terrified to speak up about even the most blatant violations. Alexandra observed staff meetings where Brandon publicly humiliated employees who failed to meet sales goals. He displayed their names on a whiteboard with red marks indicating performance issues. The ritual was clearly designed to shame rather than coach, leaving team members looking defeated rather than motivated. The psychological environment was just as troubling as the physical one. Alexandra noticed employees tensing when Brandon's office door opened, their voices automatically dropping to whispers. Laughter would die instantly when he walked into the break room. Some workers took their lunches in their cars to avoid his scrutiny. Scheduling was his primary weapon of control. Those who questioned him suddenly found themselves with unpredictable hours, making childcare and second jobs nearly impossible. Employees who failed to meet his ever-increasing quotas saw their hours dramatically reduced. Alexandra discovered cases where full-time employees had been reduced to just 12 hours per week. Not enough to resign, but certainly not enough to live on. He calls it performance-based scheduling, whispered Damon, a college student who worked in electronics. But it's really just punishment. Last month, I had to miss a shift when my mom was in the hospital. Next week's schedule? 8 hours total. But it was his treatment of employees with families, particularly mothers and expecting mothers, that revealed the darkest pattern. Notice how few parents work here now? Sarah commented one afternoon. When I started, at least half the staff were moms or dads working around school schedules. The company was great about accommodating family needs. What happened to them all? Sarah glanced around before answering. Pushed out one by one. Brandon calls them complications. Says parents are always calling out for sick kids or school events. He can't legally fire someone for having children, but he can make their lives impossible until they quit. That evening, Alexandra found a quiet moment to speak with Tanya, a cashier who'd been with the company for 5 years. Is it true Brandon targets parents? Alexandra asked discreetly. Tanya nodded grimly. Especially pregnant women. Before Sarah, there was Rebecca in clothing and Maria in customer service. Both pregnant, both gone within a month of announcing. That's illegal, Alexandra murmured before she could catch herself. Sure is. Doesn't stop him. Tanya glanced toward Brandon's office. The worst part? He brags about it. I overheard him on the phone with another manager talking about how keeping expensive employees off the payroll earned him a bonus last quarter. Expensive employees? His term for pregnant women and parents says they cost more in healthcare and time off. He specifically mentioned Sarah, said he was working on her situation. Alexandra began documenting everything. Brandon assigned Sarah the heaviest lifting despite store policy prohibiting pregnant employees from handling such tasks. He scheduled her for back-to-back closing and opening shifts. Whenever Sarah needed to sit briefly, Brandon would appear as if from nowhere, finding her additional tasks that required standing. One evening, Alexandra overheard Brandon on the phone. Trust me, labor costs will be down again this quarter. That pregnant one will be gone before she can claim maternity benefits. I give her 2 weeks, tops. The Tuesday morning rush had left the store in disarray. A shipment of holiday merchandise had arrived without warning. Short-staffed departments struggled with increased customer traffic. And tension hung in the air like a storm about to break. Alexandra had arrived to find the employee entrance hallway plastered with new performance metrics posters, each boldly highlighting the names of underperforming staff in red. Sarah's name appeared repeatedly. The morning huddle had been particularly brutal. Brandon had announced yet another cut to labor hours while simultaneously introducing higher sales targets. When one brave employee pointed out the contradiction, Brandon had smiled thinly and suggested that some people might need to evaluate whether retail was right for them. The implied threat hung heavy as employees dispersed to their departments, shoulders slumped in defeat. By mid-morning, Alexandra noticed Sarah was moving differently. Several times, Sarah paused mid-sentence during customer interactions, taking a deep breath before continuing. Sarah, Alexandra whispered during a brief lull, are you feeling okay? Sarah attempted a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Just tired. The baby was active all night. She winced, one hand moving to support her lower back. They worked for another hour until Alexandra noticed Sarah leaning heavily against a display counter, eyes closed, one hand pressed firmly against her abdomen. Sarah? Sarah's eyes fluttered open, her face pale. I'm fine. Just need to sit for a minute. Doctor said I should rest periodically. Of course, there's a stool in the stockroom. I'll go get it. No! Sarah's response was urgent. Brandon checks the cameras. He doesn't allow sitting on the sales floor. That's ridiculous. You're 7 months pregnant. Doesn't matter. Last week, Tanya had a migraine and sat down for less than a minute. He wrote her up. 20 minutes later, During another momentary pause between customers, Sarah suddenly gasped, doubling over slightly, both hands now cradling her belly. Alexandra was at her side instantly. "That's it. You need to sit down right now." "I can't," Sarah whispered, fear evident in her voice. "Brandon's been looking for a reason to write me up. If I lose this job, I lose my health insurance." "Stay here," Alexandra said firmly. "I'm going to find Brandon myself." She found him in his office, scrolling through his phone with a bored expression while employees scrambled on the understaffed floor. "Brandon, Sarah needs to sit down. She's in pain." Brandon barely looked up. "Who the hell? Oh, it's you, new girl. Alex, right? Not your problem. Get back to your department." "She's pregnant and clearly uncomfortable. She just needs a short break." That got his attention. He set down his phone, his expression hardening. "Did she send you to ask? Typical. Always looking for special treatment." Brandon stood, his height deliberately intimidating as he loomed over her. "You've been here what? A week? Don't tell me how to manage my staff. If Sarah can't handle the job requirements, that's her problem, not mine." He brushed past Alexandra and stalked onto the sales floor. By the time they reached kitchenware, Sarah was visibly struggling. One hand braced against a display, the other holding her stomach, her face contorted in a grimace. Several customers watched with concern. "Sarah," Brandon said loudly, "Alex here says you're looking to slack off. Something about needing special accommodations." Sarah's face flushed with embarrassment. "I just need to sit down for a few minutes, Brandon. The doctor said I shouldn't stand for more than—" "The doctor doesn't run this store," Brandon cut her off dismissively. "We're short-staffed, it's our busiest season, and you want to take an unscheduled break because your feet hurt?" A nearby customer, an older woman, looked appalled. "It's not my feet," Sarah said quietly. "I'm having contractions." Brandon actually laughed, the sound sharp and cruel in the tense atmosphere. Convenient timing, isn't it? Right in the middle of holiday rush. Sarah's eyes glistened with unshed tears, but her voice remained steady. "Please, Brandon, just 5 minutes." Brandon's response was loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Look, if you can't handle the basic requirements of the job, find another one. Plenty of people would be grateful for your position." He gestured broadly around the store. "See all these other pregnant women managing just fine. Oh, wait, there aren't any. Want to know why? Because they understand retail isn't a desk job with nap time." Alexandra watched in horror as Sarah's face crumpled, humiliation warring with physical discomfort. A customer gasped. Another muttered something about disgraceful. "Now get back to work," he concluded coldly, "or go home and don't bother coming back." The moment he was out of sight, Alexandra guided Sarah to a nearby display chair. "Sit," she urged, keeping watch for Brandon. "I don't care what he says." Sarah sank gratefully into the chair, both hands now pressed against her belly. "Thank you," she whispered. "But he'll see on the cameras. I can't lose this job, Alex. The insurance." Alexandra crouched beside her. "Listen to me, Sarah. What he's doing is wrong. It's against company policy and probably illegal. You have rights." Sarah gave a hollow laugh. "Rights don't pay medical bills. Rights don't help when you're a single mom with a newborn and no income." She took another measured breath. "My doctor warned me that standing too long could trigger preterm labor, but what choice do I have?" "You have more choices than you think," Alexandra replied with quiet determination. "And things are going to change around here. I promise you that." Alexandra knew she needed irrefutable evidence before she could act. During her evening shifts, she volunteered for inventory counts, giving her access to the back office where records were kept. She photographed altered time cards, doctored customer complaints, and manipulated inventory reports. Alexandra created a spreadsheet tracking the pattern of employees who had left the store since Brandon's arrival. The numbers were damning. 37 employees had quit in 8 months, a turnover rate unheard of in Daylight's history. More telling was who had left: 16 parents, 4 pregnant women, 3 employees with documented medical conditions, and 5 workers over 50. Alexandra reached out to former employees. Many were reluctant to talk at first, fearing retaliation, but opened up when they realized someone was finally listening. She discovered logs of complaints that had been dismissed or buried. She found copies of emails from the regional director to Brandon, congratulating him on keeping labor costs down and suggesting ways to manage out high-cost employees without triggering legal issues. The most damning evidence came when Alexandra overheard Brandon on a conference call with other store managers, sharing best practices for reducing staffing costs. "Pregnant employees are the easiest," he boasted. "Schedule them for the hardest shifts, give them physical tasks, and document every minor issue. Most quit before they can claim benefits." "The regional director must love you," another manager commented. "Got a bonus last quarter for having the lowest benefit utilization in the district," Brandon confirmed. "Just working on this one pregnant cashier now. Another week, tops." That night, Alexandra compiled everything into a comprehensive report. As she finished, Alexandra thought of Sarah, still working despite the pain, still serving customers with kindness while being treated with contempt. Tomorrow, she decided, would be her last day undercover. It was time to reclaim her company. Alexandra arrived early the next morning, but not as Alex, the new hire. She came as herself, Alexandra Winters, CEO and founder of Daylight. The temporary hair dye had been washed out, her designer suit precisely tailored, her posture once again confident and commanding. She entered through the front doors, accompanied by Samuel Chen, her head of legal, and Monica Torres, her trusted head of human resources. The store wouldn't open to customers for another hour, giving her the stage she needed. Brandon was conducting the morning meeting when she walked in. He glanced up with irritation at the interruption, clearly not recognizing her. "Excuse me, we're not open yet," he began, then stopped abruptly as employees began to whisper, recognition dawning on their faces. Alexandra strode forward, positioning herself at the front of the room. "Good morning," she said, her voice carrying through the suddenly silent store. "For those who don't recognize me, I'm Alexandra Winters, founder and CEO of Daylight." A ripple of murmurs spread through the assembled staff. She saw Sarah at the back, eyes wide with shock, one hand unconsciously moving to her belly in a protective gesture. "And for those who knew me as Alex Walker these past 2 weeks, I apologize for the deception. It was necessary to understand what was really happening in this store." Brandon's face had gone pale. "Ms. Winters, I had no idea you were... I would have prepared a proper welcome." Alexandra cut him off with a raised hand. "I've seen exactly how you run things, Mr. Mercer. No preparation necessary." She turned to address the entire staff. 15 years ago, I founded this company with a simple promise to create a workplace where employees were valued as human beings first, not just as productivity units, where parents could work without sacrificing their families, where those facing personal challenges would find support, not punishment. That promise has been broken in this store, and for that, I owe you all an apology. "Ms. Winters, I think you may have misunderstood some aspects of our operations here," Brandon attempted. "Save it," Alexandra interrupted. "I've spent 2 weeks documenting the challenges in this store, Mr. Mercer. The altered time cards, the discriminatory scheduling, the targeted harassment of parents and pregnant employees." She gestured to Samuel, who handed her a folder. "I have recorded evidence of you admitting to intentionally pushing out pregnant employees to avoid paying benefits, of boasting about receiving bonuses, for keeping labor costs down through what amounts to constructive dismissal." Brandon's face flushed. "Those conversations were private. They were conducted on company premises during company time, using company equipment," Alexandra corrected him coldly. "And they documented systematic discrimination that violates not only every value this company stands for, but federal and state law." She turned to the assembled staff again. "What's happened here isn't just one manager gone rogue. It represents a failure at multiple levels of leadership, including my own. I failed to ensure the values I founded this company on were being upheld. For that, I am deeply sorry." Alexandra paused, making eye contact with Sarah. "But accountability starts now." She faced Brandon directly. "Brandon Mercer, you're terminated, effective immediately. Security will escort you to collect your personal belongings, after which you will leave the premises and not return." Brandon's face contorted with rage. "You can't just—" "I can, and I have," Alexandra cut him off. "You'll find your final paycheck will reflect numerous deductions, the same creative accounting you've applied to your employees' wages. The company will also be cooperating fully with the Labor Department investigation that begins this afternoon." She nodded to security guards who had positioned themselves near Brandon. As he was escorted away, Alexandra continued addressing the staff. "The regional director, who enabled and encouraged these practices, has also been terminated. An interim management team will be in place by this afternoon." She gestured to Monica. "Ms. Torres from corporate HR will be available to meet with each of you individually today to address any issues you've experienced, from wage theft to scheduling abuses." "I know trust has been broken," Alexandra acknowledged. "Words mean little after what you've experienced, but actions begin today." She outlined immediate changes. All altered time cards would be corrected, with back pay issued immediately. Employees who had been forced out would be contacted with offers to return. Scheduling would revert to the employee-friendly system Alexandra had originally designed. Additionally, I'll be personally overseeing this location for the next month as we rebuild what's been lost. Alexandra walked toward Sarah. "Ms. Miller, I believe you're scheduled for a 10-hour shift today, is that correct?" Sarah nodded, still looking stunned. "That ends now. You're going directly to Human Resources to file for the paid maternity leave you're entitled to, effective immediately. Company policy provides 6 months at full pay with flexible return options." Alexandra's voice softened. "Your job will be waiting when you're ready, with whatever accommodations you need as a new mother." Sarah's composure finally broke, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I didn't think anyone cared anymore. I thought the company had changed." "The company lost its way," Alexandra corrected gently. "But we're finding it again, starting today." She turned back to address the entire staff. "This store was my first. It's where everything began, where I once mopped floors and stocked shelves myself. Somewhere along the way, I became too distant, too removed from the day-to-day reality of the people who make this company what it is." Alexandra squared her shoulders, her voice resolute. "That changes now. Daylight was built on respect for every employee, every customer, every person who walks through our doors. It's time we remembered who we are." In the days that followed, Alexandra instituted a thorough audit of all store locations, sending trusted executives undercover to ensure the problems weren't widespread. She implemented a whistleblower program with direct lines to corporate leadership, bypassing regional management entirely. Alexandra personally visited Sarah at home, bringing a company-provided care package and assurances that her job awaited her return on her own terms. "When you're ready to return, I'd like you to consider a management position. Assistant store manager to start, with a path to store manager if you're interested. Flexible hours, accommodations for childcare. Whatever you need to succeed both as a professional and as a mother." Sarah's eyes widened. "Are you serious? I don't have management experience." "You have something more valuable: integrity and genuine care for both customers and colleagues. I've watched how others naturally turn to you for guidance. The rest can be taught." As Alexandra prepared to transition day-to-day operations to a new store manager, she gathered the staff one last time. 2 weeks ago, I came here because something felt wrong with the heart of my company. What I found was both heartbreaking and illuminating. I saw how easily values can be corrupted when leaders become distant from those they lead. She looked around at the faces that had become familiar, at the renewed energy in the store. But I also witnessed extraordinary resilience and care. I saw employees supporting each other despite difficult circumstances. I saw a commitment to customers even when management failed you. You reminded me what Daylight was built to be. The measure of any company isn't found in boardrooms or quarterly reports. It's found in moments like I witnessed here, in Sarah helping an elderly customer despite her own discomfort, in the small kindnesses you showed each other, even when the system failed you. Alexandra's voice grew firm with conviction. That's the company I founded. That's the company we're rebuilding together. And I promise you, that's the company will remain. Have you ever witnessed workplace discrimination? What would you have done in Alexandra's position? Would you have revealed your identity sooner? Or gathered more evidence like she did? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of workplace justice, hit that like button and subscribe to hear more undercover boss stories. Don't forget to ring the notification bell so you'll know immediately when we post a new video. Check out our other videos appearing on your screen now, and we'll see you again tomorrow at the same time with another brand new video.